Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Jentry Chau versus the Underworld, Season 1, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we don't have a definitive... I brought up last episode, I was like, are we going to get like a definitive, aftermath to all this? And it's like, we don't know if it's like the next day or a couple days later. We do see like people are whispering about like, yo, she's the demon girl who burned down the town. So it's like, well, she's not getting chased out of the town with torches and pitchforks. At least now, that could always turn back around. That once again surprises me. Like, I didn't talk about this last episode. I would have assumed that'd be something that comes up way later in the story, or maybe just never gets put to get two and two together. Like I said, like maybe she does her like hero saving, but no one recognizes. Once again, ergo, the example I've always used, like kept using, is like Danny Phantom, like no one realizing Danny is Danny Phantom. You know, that situation. So I kept thinking like that's where I was going to go. So like it'd be not only like, is that like it's known at the school and there's whispers about it, she's kind of getting chastised, like, you know, that one jocklet pushes past her like, oh, then sorry, I didn't see you there, like, don't set me on fire or whatever, or something like that. And so it seems like the one person, like, well, I mean, from what we can see later on, Stella seems to still be her friend. It also makes sense because it's like, well, your boyfriend is childhood friends with Jentry and they're tied, and it's like, if Michael doesn't have as much of an issue, then you can and not won't. I mean, plus also like you got to know Jentry before that, so you're like, no, Jentry seems pretty cool. I mean, and since I'm already on this conversation, I'll go ahead and jump to it. It's like, Gentry's like, yeah, sorry I didn't tell you about the whole me being the one behind the fire, which he's like, I mean, yeah, you should have, but he also kind of understands where she's coming from. And it's like, I wonder, I mean, we didn't get that perspective, but I'd love to know, like, considering the conversation he had with Jentry nearing the end of episode 1, how maybe that's also why he kind of like, ooh, I kind of badmouthed that girl, not realizing like, yo, Jentry, because he's also like, right, I know you, like, you're not a bad person. And he even said like, even if it wasn't an accident, that person still calls him. So I'm curious like how much of how he felt talking to Jentry about the demon girl, and now knowing she is that person, like how much of that, like maybe that's where the complication comes from. But we didn't really get to have that conversation until Stella shows up, and she's like, right, I'm sure you didn't mean to set fire to the school. At least I don't think so. So Stella's trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, Michael's giving her the benefit of the doubt, but still, I don't know. Once again, we haven't gotten the full blown, like I said, chase torches and pitchforks thing, but like I said, I get the feeling like that could easily come up in the story. But hey, who knows? Maybe that's not the route it goes. But I mean, she hasn't been chased out of school. The principal, Wheeler, hasn't done anything about it despite everything. So I don't know. So I'm because they were like, yeah, I'm sure you're not an arsonist. I guess that's kind of being tossed around. Once again, we just haven't gotten the general town's perspective on it. Like, I mean, it might just be like it's a small town, so you assume word had spread, so like the entire town's got to know at this point in time. I doubt that's just allocated to the school, but I mean, who could say that? Could be 100% wrong. Either way, obviously Jentry is meant to like, let's go train some more and get you to close the portal, as Ed is like smacking stuff back into the portal, which I love that he shows up at the school. We see in the opening, which I didn't talk about. I really do like the opening. I didn't talk about that last episode, but he's in a like disguise, and like, so when he's running around town, he's pretending to be Gentry's like cousin. But Flora is trying to get her to close the portal, but she can't, because once again, she has too much trauma built up. It's years, nearly a decade of trauma associated with her powers. And then Flora is kind of chastising her a little bit, like, you don't know what you're fully capable of. You need to kind of go. And I think Flora's trying to be like understandable, but I think it's just there's so much riding on this. It's like we need to, because there's so much danger on the way. Like, more stuff is going to like come into this world if we don't close this. Two, it's also the situation of those guys said they will come back and kill Jentry, so there's a lot on the line. But it's also like, yeah, Flora made a lot of these decisions. It's like, why didn't you ever prepare Jentry in like the 8 years? You knew the time was going to come eventually. That 8 years went by pretty fast or whatever. I mean, if they made that deal, the whole point was like, wait till she was 16. But who's to say like that deal went down like 8 years, like Mr. Chang and Flora made that deal 8 years ago. We know they just made it so that he'll come collect when she's 16, but I don't remember in episode 1 if they ever specify when that deal was struck. But either way, it's like you've had time to prepare her, but you chose not to, because in her mind it's like, I'm gonna give you a normal life, but it's like you're putting so much pressure on her, like, oh, you got to do this now, you have to learn how to control your powers, even though she's going 8 years without using them because she has such trauma associated, which I think is such irony too, because I don't think Flora picked up on it. Maybe she did, but when she's trying to learn how to use her ghost telekinesis, she's like, oh, it's easy for you to say unless you're the one doing it. But I don't think it felt like for a quick second she kind of thought about it, but then she kept it moving, like, all right, let's start this over again. Where I'm like, it feels like you're being a hypocrite. Like, here you are struggling with something, and it's like you're not being sympathetic to Jentry. It's like, I mean, to be fair, like, all this went down because you kind of threw her into the deep end, and it's like, once again, it's like she never had to like really fully face everything. And I'm not trying to like trash Jentry for that, but I'm just saying, like, it's unfair to like not let her have time to process all this. Just that time away, never, like, you know, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind for those 8 years, and now having to face it again, it's what's really kind of put such a stranglehold on Jentry. So, but either way, we go back to the situation where last episode left off, because we didn't get a conclusion on that when she saw her mom. And it's something I'd said, like, oh, is that her mom's actual ghost? But I'm like, no, it's most likely maybe like an echo of, like, you know, and it turns out it's kind of that. Well, they say a vision, but she sees her mom and her dad eventually fighting a dragon, and like they're stealing the scales off of it. And Jentry brings that up to her grandmother and to Flora, and Flora, once again, great aunt, not grandmother, but Flora's like, oh, no, that's BS. Like, there's a Shin type of pearl that like makes you see stuff. And it's like, right, most likely Mr. Chang is like messing with you, wanting you to see certain things that aren't true. But I feel like I was like, because she was like, no, your parents weren't like that. They were telemarketers. I'm like, I'm not. I legitimately spent so much of the episode being like, I don't know whether that's true or not. But there's stuff in it that led credence to Jentry feeling like, no, there's got to be some validity to it, because there was something hidden away at the bottom of a turtle, and Jentry found that compartment. It was empty, but it's like, oh, so it was true though. So it's like, so who's lying? Is Jentry being messed with, or is Flora lying to her? So Gentry's covering up by being like, oh, I'm gonna keep the pearl and hide the fact this is still around. And Ed helps keep that secret. But also, like, once again, Flora's very secretive, because she's like, oh, here's a thing I'm trying to get access to that'll help you be able to control your powers. And she's like, but, like, let me, what's the combination? Let me know what's in it. And she's like, no, I don't want you to. So, and that's why I was like, you're saying it's supposed to help Jentry, but you won't let her see it. But Jentry was just so busy, like, right, she was so focused on her own mission, like using this pearl more and getting a clear-cut vision of all this. Because it's interesting, because it's like, prior to now, Jentry just had it on her, so she was able to access these visions or whatever. They would just randomly kick in. Having a pearl on you directly makes it easier to access it. But we saw, like, at the beginning when she saw her parents, like, the third eye started popping open. But later on, she starts literally keeping it in her hand, and it literally starts fusing into her. So you're like, okay, I mean, first and foremost, we don't know who put it on her and how. Well, she started having the visions last episode, so sometime last episode, somebody slipped it onto her. I mean, there are people who've been close enough to her for that to happen, like some of her friends. Like, it could be Estella, I doubt it, or it could be like transfer student dude. Once again, he seems to have got his own secrets, basing that 100% on the opening, but there seems to be something there. You know, where there's smoke, there might be some fire, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to be a Michael thing. Whatever Michael's circumstances are, I feel like that's going to be a thing of, he's not involved in this directly. I think it's just going to be, he's sadly going to be a victim of it, that he might get possessed or something. That's my feeling vibe for it, but we'll see. Either way, you could also see the downside to this pearl. Like, okay, seems to be some validity to it, because she's at like a playground and she sees her mom and dad and they're making a deal. And then my immediate thought was, oh, are we going to find out that Gentry's parents weren't on the up and up? And because of that, maybe that's why Flora doesn't want Jentry to know too much about her parents, why she's lying. Like, oh, they're just telemarketers. Because I was like, either they knew about all this and somehow Flora had no idea that they knew, Or, once again, she's lying just for Gentry's sake. So it's like you don't know that your parents were kind of on the shadier side. Because they're making a deal. They stole like an elixir or something from Flora and gave to this person who apparently there's beef between her and Flora. And she was like, oh, like, how do I know you don't tell Flora that you gave this to me? And tries to attack him. I mean, hell, she tried to go for Ping, Gentry's dad, but luckily he had the dragon scales on like armor. So it's like, that's where you're like, interesting. So, but it's like, yeah, they were kind of doing some back alley deals. I was like, are you like, that's why I was like, are you guys kind of criminals? Are you selling like some of this more supernatural stuff? And we see later on, like, because Ping and Mooney, Gentry's mom, were like debating about making a deal with someone. I was like, they made a deal with Mr. Chang first, didn't they? Not less the Flora deal already pre-existed that. Who knows? Once again, we don't know the full timeline of that, but they wanted a way out. They're like, we can't spend our entire lives like fighting dragons and stuff like that. The supernatural world. It's like, we need to get out of this for our daughter's sake. Not only because the longer we're in this, the more likely we could probably get killed or a child could be affected. Like, we want our daughter to have a normal life. So this is that one final job we're in and we're out. And I don't remember if we ever found, I don't think they ever specified what it was that Mr. Chang wanted from them, what he was trying to get out of them. Maybe it has something to do with why Gentry has like the Yellow Emperor's powers or whatever that she found out about. Like what this all stems from is like the Yellow Emperor. So, because as I figured it's much, because I'm like, we never saw it with Flora, nor we saw it with her parents in this episode. Yeah, they don't have those same powers. They're skilled martial artists and they know about the magic and all this stuff and powers, but they don't have anything like what Gentry has. And once again, those guys last episode said like that's something no human should have. So I mean, it's really sad and you're kind of like bummed how everything plays out, because Gentry like goes back into the place that Michael works, and she goes into the kitchen, and you know she's so sucked up into this stuff. Like I said, this is where you start seeing, you had seen like she was crossing the street and Ed had to stop her, like, yo, you almost got hit by a car. She's almost in this trance, because it's like, you don't, that's where you're like, I don't know how much of this is BS and how much of this is real. And like obviously the deal being made, Gentry got upset and set a fire in there. Michael's trying to help her put the fire out. He gets like debris falling on him. Luckily Ed was able to get him out, and Flora was learning the telekinesis and she was able to help Gentry and even got the pearl out of her. But for Gentry, it's just like looking at the devastation of her powers again. It's like, because I don't know how to control this, you were right, Gugu, like it was all a lie. And she passes out, and she was out for like a day or whatever. Like there's still obviously some smoke in her lungs because of all of this. And even Mr. Chang was like, oh, hey Gentry, like, yes, like you fell into this trap. How does it feel to see your parents again, just as the this is going to be the last thing you see as the smoke fills your lungs, and then I'll come to collect your soul. But luckily, like I said, Ed and but either way, the whole situation ends with Gentry waking up and being like, yeah, I don't want to ever use my powers again. Can we find another way? And her grandmother's like, okay, we'll find another way. Then we see the box is unlocked, and the same thing that Chang had given to her parents for them to like basically kind of, I guess, breathe on it. It seems like that was how you kind of see that you signed the contract with your breath. It seemed like, I don't know if that's what that was indicating, but I can't tell if that was the same one from like Ping and Mooney, or once again, I wasn't paying attention to the names like I should have, because that could have easily been the one that she had when she made her deal with Mr. Chang. So either way, it's like that all wasn't BS. And the person that it's like Flora is like, oh, I got a deal for you, and she's talking to the person that Mooney and Ping went to help out with Gentry and stuff, right? So once again, Mr. Chang was manipulating Gentry, but not all that was BS. It does seem like Gugu is lying. There is stuff she's keeping hidden in multiple fronts. So she's like, I need your help for Gentry to realize what she's fully capable of. So it's like she's not, I get it. It's such a dangerous situation. I got to put your feelings aside. But it's like, no, making Jentry as comfortable as possible and understanding where she's coming from, the trauma that's there. If you're able to potentially deal with that, you probably would, you'd be in better footing. But it's like like she's so busy rushing things, and it's like, right, we don't have time to take things slow. Once again, things keep escalating, and there's just more fuel added to the fire. But it's like, I think she's going to end up doing more harm than good. But I'm wondering, like, is she going to like have this woman attack Jentry just to kind of force Jentry to like retaliate and awaken her powers and show what she's really capable of? Like, are you going to go that, are you willing to go that far, which is very effed up? But I don't know if that's the direction that's going to end up going. But I just don't know what direction they're going to like take that. But it just feels like that's set up for something sinister. But maybe, like, it gives the vibe like Gugu's willing to do whatever it takes for the greater good. But I just don't know which direction. Like I feel like my way of thinking how Gugu might handle this seems so cynical, but I don't know if she's willing to go to that at lengths. Maybe it's not as extreme, but maybe it is going to be an extreme way about handling this. But still. Then there's also the whole situation with Kit. I just remembered his name because I keep forgetting it, but, transfer student, dude. Like, Kit, I mean, that's also that sad situation with Jentry where, like, she's around Stella and Michael, and then, like, them, like, the more Stella's, like, clenching onto him, it's like, right, it seemed apparent last episode, but even more so, it's still kind of the thing of, oh, I kind of liked you back then, and I still kind of like you too. Those feelings resurface after this time apart, but also, like, oh, I know you're dating someone, and I don't want to do that to Stella, and just feels weird and awkward, and once again, you're feeling a third wheel, so you're like, hey, Kit, we had a date, and he's like, what? Oh, yeah, sure, our date. He's like, wait, what about my food? And being like, no, don't worry about it, Kit, I got it covered for you. But yeah, like, Kit was willing to have her back, but once again, it's that thing of, do you trust him because he seems like he has ulterior motives, being like, yo, I'm willing to help you out. It's like, oh, it's really our own date, so we're supposed to hang out. But then, like, when Jentry went into her trance, he was like, oh, Jentry, are you okay? And saw something was odd. I mean, this isn't indicative of him, but the fact is he didn't follow after her. Just the fact is he grabbed her hand, kind of got burned a little bit, and just stopped. We didn't see him for the rest of the episode. I'm like, I don't know what to make of this dude. Like I said, I'm suspicious of him, but maybe like I said, he'll be revealed not to be a bad guy. Once again, I keep seeing the wings in the intro, and I'm like, but those are kind of like angel wings. So I'm like, but that doesn't mean anything. There's been plenty of depictions where like angel-like beings have been complete and utter douchebags. So we'll have to wait to see. But I'm so curious to see also, like, because of the whole, like, oh yeah, like, what happened to Michael, like, where is him and Jentry stand? Because it's like, Stella's probably going to feel a certain way because it's like, cool, my boyfriend kind of could have died because of you. And Michael might be a lot more forgiving, like, no, Jentry didn't mean anything by it. Or he might be more fearful. Like, this is just one thing after another. It's just going to add more and more fear that people have towards Jentry. But who knows? Like, it's just going to be interesting to see what the aftermath of this is going to be. It's just, like I said, it's just building and building until, like, it's probably going to be like a powder cake exploding finally. But that's just me theorizing, spitballing where things are now. Like I said, I'm looking at it from a very glass half empty point of view, like the worst case scenario. And, it might be proven wrong when it's all said and done. But very, very interesting developments. I'm curious to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.